They bought into a belief system, an ideology. It's called gender identity ideology. It's a belief system.
Yeah.
And the adherence to this, it's a quasi alternative religion. It operates almost like a religion because it requires people to believe things that have no biological or physical substance to it.
Yeah.
But yet you must believe this unquestioningly. So the idea that I, as a girl, as a woman, can have been born into the wrong body. I have a male identity. Well, where does that rest? What piece in me? Where in my body is this male identity? Well, it's probably somewhere in your mind. We're not really sure. Well, what part of the mind? Well, we're not exactly sure, but it's there and you have the right to assert it. And this ideology has millions and millions of dollars behind it.
Well, welcome to Cultural Catalyst, where we help you to learn how to live fully live, co-labor with God, and change the world. I'm your host, Kris Vallotton, and today I have a very good friend, Vernadette Broyles. Did I pronounce your last name right?
You did. It's Vernadette Ramirez Broyles.
And she's the president and general counsel and founder of Child and Parental Rights Campaign. And she's an attorney trained at Yale and Harvard. And by the way, she's an attorney, but she has a degree also in biology, which is very interesting for the subject we're going to be getting into. And you work as a litigator, a prosecutor, and you served on state boards. And you have a focus. You're really focused right now, especially on child protection rights. And you've started the Child and Parental Rights Campaign, which I am so, you and I are on the same page here. Like we just both have this passion for what's happening. So let's just open up with, tell us a little bit about you, what your passion is, and then let's get into this whole thing about parental rights. We have abortion, transgender of children. We just live in this crazy world right now. So
yeah, we do.
Here we go.
All right. Well, I think it starts from my early childhood, quite frankly. I mean, so many of the things that define us and guide our futures is what we experience early on. I was born into a Christian family, but it was a troubled family. And at an early age, very early age, I experienced sexual abuse, as well as in teen years at school by a school teacher.
Oh, wow.
So now why am I even talking about this? But what I understand, what that's seeded into me is, number one, a love for justice.
Yeah.
But also an ability to understand why a young girl, a woman, would want to reject her sex.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Want to reject her body. Yeah. And in fact, even why one's identity can become lost to you for a time. Trauma has a way of obscuring your true identity. So all of these things I took with me into the practice of law when I recognized that no, my passion is the law and justice. By the grace of God, I was accepted at Harvard and had been practicing for quite a number of years. Then prosecutor, litigator, but then as a family law practitioner and as a guardian ad litem. Guardian ad litems are appointed by courts to defend the best interests of the child in various proceedings, right? Yeah. So I'm doing this, a real child's advocate, and the Lord encountered me. I had a encounter with the Lord in my kitchen. About 2 years into the Spirit of God beginning to speak to me and say, get ready, get ready, get ready. Your life is about to change. And for 2 years, I'm going, okay, how, what, frantically trying to figure it out. But in his time, I'm sitting at my table, was the Kairos moment. And I began to read stories about detransitioners, adults, who were describing how their bodies were mutilated, their lives torn apart. They couldn't get pieces of themselves back. They had poisoned their biochemistry. All for the
Explain
promise.
what a detransitioner is exactly, in case we might have some people here that don't even know what that phrase is.
Sure. So people who are gender dysphoric about their sex become distressed with their sex. Many of them are undergoing these medical treatments.
Yeah.
And you know, this is important for your audience to understand. I'll get back into detransitioners, but this is really important. When you give a child, you know, an adolescent puberty blockers to interfere with the full progression of their puberty, and then you follow up with cross-sex hormones, which is what is the treatment paradigm for adolescents, according to this agenda, in order to cause their appearance to align with their transgender identity. Mm-hmm. Well, when you do this cocktail of treatments, it sterilizes them chemically.
Yeah.
In the vast majority of cases. At minimum, it negatively impacts their fertility, so that it's unclear whether they'll ever be able to have children.
Yes.
Not to mention a host of other harms it does to their bodies. Their bone structure becomes compromised. Greatly increased likelihood of cardiovascular disease, of thrombosis, you know, blood clots, of cancers, of a whole variety, because you're interfering with the natural biochemistry and development in adolescence, which is a critical juncture, is a critical threshold in order to become a fully functioning and healthy adult.
And how is that even happening? You know, for example, in California, you know, you can't get a tattoo without your parents' permission, and you can't give them an aspirin without their parents' permission. So, tell our viewers a little bit about what is happening, not just in California, but in many states. What is happening to our children?
So it's starting most often with the internet. The internet is riddled with trans activism, I call it, it's almost cult-like. It's an ideological space where kids are sucked into this belief that they could be born in the wrong body. The algorithms are programmed to feed them one YouTube, one influencer after the other. We've heard of kids that will be on for hours. They'll stay up all night.
Yeah.
Just watching. Okay. So once they're sort of accessed and promoted this or proselytized by the internet, very often now schools are transitioning children behind their parents' backs.
Is that legal?
It is in California at the moment. It is. You actually have passed a law in California that says, it's AB 1955, that says that schools are not allowed to inform parents of their child's gender identity unless the child consents to it.
Wow.
It's inverting the parent-child relationship.
Wow.
Okay. And this is actually the law in several other blue states. It is in other states, even red states, it's happening, and it's happening because of the Obama and Biden administration. The Obama administration distorted the meaning of Title IX and
Title IX, explain that.
Title IX is the federal law that prohibits discrimination in schools based upon sex.
Got it.
Okay. It protects sports, but it protects every aspect of school. You walk into school and Title IX controls, right?
Got it.
But the Obama administration sent out guidance to schools all over the country from the Department of Education saying that Title IX now includes gender identity. So if a child begins to identify as something other than their biological sex, the schools have to endorse and affirm unquestioningly their gender identity.
Can't be questioned. They can't send you to a counselor to talk you through it. They can't push back on it, right?
Right. And that was the guidance that they sent out to schools. Now, there are many schools that said, that recognized, well, this is actually not a law. This is not even a regulation. This is just guidance. So, and this is bad, and we're not going to do this. Okay.
Oh,
But
so let's clarify this, because this is something new that I didn't understand. Are you saying that the law doesn't require them to not push back, but that there's a guidance kind of white sheet that instructs them to not push back?
the original guidance that went out was not law. It was guidance.
Got it.
However, they used the term guidance, but they treated it as if it was law. In other words, what they were doing was overstepping their legal bounds, but yet acting as if they had the authority to do it. I know it's confusing, but that's just what they did.
And we're talking about the
lawlessness.
school system right now, right?
We're talking about schools because Title IX governs schools.
Got it. Okay, I'm
K through
sorry.
12
Yeah, you
and
said that.
as well as college. That's okay. No, it's confused. It is confusing. So under Obama, the administration behaved in a lawless way. It literally overstepped, but calculated that it could get away with it, basically.
Got
And
it.
so many schools were actually agreeable to do this because they had a mindset of, yeah, we're in with this, we agree. And then other schools that are more conservative said, no, this is not quite law, so we're not going to follow. So we had patchwork throughout the country where this is now showing up in many schools, and parents have no idea that this
Wow.
is happening.
Now, is
Now,
part of the Title IX thing, just so I can clarify, is it law in California? Is it law in California, or is it
correct.
guidelines in California?
No,
Okay.
it's law in California now, and in fact, in several states, I know for a fact in California
Yeah.
that it became law under state law.
State law.
That
Got it.
that
Not federal
you
law. Yeah.
and that you well, what the law was is, or excuse me, the law is in California that you affirm, but you can't tell parents until the child consents.
Yeah. So that's law.
Okay.
That's not guidelines.
That's not guidelines.
Yeah.
Now, currently, so that your audience is really clear as mud, under the Biden administration, they went the full Monty. They then turned this into a regulation that would make it law that you had to affirm. And right now, that's being challenged in court, in a variety of courts, and I'm quite certain it's going to end up in the Supreme Court.
Wow. That's insane. That's crazy. Why would the Obama administration, the Biden administration do this? Like what are they thinking they're helping? Do they think they're destroying children? They're like, are they outwardly trying to destroy children?
Well, very few people take the position that I just want to destroy children.
Yeah.
No, they bought into a deception. They bought into a belief system, an ideology. It's called gender identity ideology. It's a belief system.
Yeah.
And the adherence to this, it's a quasi alternative religion. It operates almost like a religion because it requires people to believe things that have no biological or physical substance to it.
Yeah.
But yet you must believe this unquestioningly. So the idea that I, as a girl, as a woman, can have been born into the wrong body. I have a male identity. Well, where does that rest? What piece in me? Where in my body is this male identity? Well, it's probably somewhere in your mind. We're not really sure. Well, what part of the mind? Well, we're not exactly sure, but it's there, and you have the right to assert it. And this ideology has millions and millions of dollars behind it.
Yes.
And powerful organizations and people behind it. And they have been very shrewd. So they have cast it as a civil right.
Yeah.
And once it became a civil right, the questions about the fundamental science and biology and medicine, how do these treatments actually harm children's body? The basic medical questions are glossed over because it's cast very cleverly as a civil right.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I've been saying for the last 5 years, like, this is a religion. It has all the values of a religion, right? It has a faith that is not, it's not needed to be proved, because religion doesn't have to be proved, right? It's, you live by faith and not by facts. It has a creed, it has core values, and it has a priesthood. Like, it is a religion. And part of my challenge in the school system, we're just talking about school system right now, is, as you well know, you can't preach Jesus in the school system legally. You can't teach religion in a public school system, but the LGBTQ movement can teach their doctrine, which is a faith doctrine. It is not backed up by facts in the school system.
That's exactly right. Now, the proponents of this ideology, I often will refer to it as a worldview, a belief system, and ideology, because those are terms that I think people can access readily. The proponents of this belief system will claim that there are studies that back it up. However, any honest doctor, and we deal with experts all the time, when you actually read those studies, they are riddled with confirmation bias. They are poorly done. They're not credible. They do not hold up to scientific muster. But nevertheless, the proponents of this belief system assert that they're Bible. They're unquestionable.
Yeah.
One cannot even question them. So there is a veneer of scientific support for this that doesn't hold up under scrutiny, but is nevertheless what they assert.
Yeah, and I think that you're the one that helped me understand this too. And it's all under the guise that if you don't allow your children to transition, they're going to kill themselves. They're suicide, right? So this is. And I know for a fact that several of my friends have had this choice to make. Here's the two choices, right? Two choices. Well, would you rather have a live, daughter who transitioned from male to female, or a dead son? And that's literally a tagline, right? That's literally a core value.
I've heard that so many times I can't count from parents. Yeah. But see, so the response that we need to give them is any medical treatment that obtains consent from parents by using that kind of rationale, that kind of claim,
yes,
is coercive. It's coercion. It's unethical. And so therefore, you really have not obtained informed consent. You have coerced a decision by scared parents. And what makes it even worse is that the claim itself is false.
Exactly.
We don't probably have time to go into the whole suicide, thing, but we could, and I can explain to you why it's demonstrably false.
Well, first of all, somebody who's a boy who thinks he's a girl, or someone who's a girl who thinks they're a boy, I mean, right away we have an obvious mental illness.
Yes,
so the fact that somebody is so distressed that they actually think they're in the wrong body tells you why kids are suicidal already.
That is correct. The proponents of this ideology, by the way, they have infiltrated the medical associations.
I know they have.
Okay? And so as a result, this phenomenon is no longer referred to as a disorder. It used to be considered a disorder. That changed. It's now simply considered just a form of distress. But in truth, it is a disorder. And even if you don't recognize that it is a disorder, in 99.9% of, pretty much 100% of the time, it is present at the same time with co-occurring other mental illnesses consistently. So the suicidality that they are claiming is really part and parcel of the fact that all young people, all individuals that have these kind of mental illnesses operating their lives have a heightened suicide risk.
Yeah.
The heightened suicide risk is attached to the co-occurring mental illness, if nothing else.
That's my point. I mean, when you get to the place in your life where you think you're in the wrong body, I mean, anyone who doesn't think that's a mental illness has a mental illness. And part of the challenge is, as you know, what is it? The American Medical Association and the Medical Psychological Association, I don't know if I have those titles right, have both affirmed that this is not a mental illness. And
That's right.
and I think the patients have taken over the psych ward. Like, are you serious? Like, are you you have a hard time trusting, your psychologist or psychiatrist when the obvious is you're actually being told something that's, I'm saying, like, who wants to go to a psychologist that doesn't think that your daughter who thinks she's a boy is normal. Like, that's normal. Oh no, that's normal. A lot of people are stuck in the wrong body. I'm like, what? And I'm going to go to you for what? Marriage counseling? I'm going to go to you for my problem with depression? Are you serious? No.
Well, and I would say the way that I put it is I get away from the terms normal, not normal. It's whether it is normative, whether it is naturally occurring. It is not naturally occurring. It is not normative, and it's not, and it is not healthy. These kids end up with tremendous mental health problems, and their mental health over time. It descends rather than improves. Suicidality greatly increases once full transition takes place, once the full medical transition takes place. The studies have shown that the suicidality increases by many fold. So, but let's, getting back to where we are with why should your audience care?
Yeah.
We should not think this is just relevant to a small, tiny subset of individuals.
It is not.
In our society. It's not. And here's why. Because the proponents of this ideology are working through school systems all around the country. There's no state in the country that's not. In every state of the country. Worse in California than others. And the internet. And media. And entertainment, to weaponize the natural angst and disorientation all adolescents feel in going through adolescence.
Yeah.
So we have to understand all of our kids are vulnerable to being accessed to believe this lie. And when they believe, and so that's why we're seeing the numbers skyrocket. They're going like this. They were going like this so bad in England that England has shut this down.
Just recently, they passed a law.
Yeah, but yes, it's not. They have socialized medicine, so they can just stop things. But yes, and why is it going like this? And Kris, it's not like going like this the same rate for males and females. It's for girls primarily.
Wow,
75 to 80% of these gender dysphoric teens of our kids are girls. That should tell you right there it's not naturally occurring.
Yep.
And because the numbers are increasing, they're just doubling and doubling and doubling. We're recognizing this is a social contagion. And it has vectors that are propagating it through our schools.
Yeah.
So it can happen. This can affect any family at any time, and many times parents won't know about it until it is way down the road, and then it's blown up your family. Yeah,
what should parents do? I mean, the $1 million question. I have a daughter, I have a son who comes to me or doesn't, maybe even worse, that doesn't come to me, but I find out that my daughter or son is, my daughter's is identifying as a male at school and wants to take puberty blockers, or already is. And of course, what you haven't said yet is this also leads to surgery. The removal of the breasts can lead to the removal of the penis, so on and so forth. Like, this is real, folks. This is really, you think this is like a little science fiction thing, or it's happening to somebody out there. No, hundreds and hundreds of surgeries are being done on girls who
as young as 13 years old
to remove their breasts.
To remove their healthy breasts.
That's right.
And I have to put something else out there that even helps us to understand how insidious this is. At the core of this ideology, is the agenda, it's become clear to me, is a goal of driving a wedge between parents and their children, separating parents from children. So the Supreme Court had said 100 years ago that children are not the mere creatures of the state. They belong to parents. This ideology is seeking to reverse that. And cause children to view themselves and to be treated as if they belong to the state. Where do I come to this conclusion? Number one, let me just lay out a few facts that will make it clear. I'm not just making this up. Number one, you have schools all throughout the country where teachers and counselors are taking the position that we know better than parents how to raise this child, whether to raise the child as a male or a female or one of 75 other possible genders. And parents are presumed to be the problem and presumed to be unsafe. They just presume them to be unsafe if they do not agree. You have now you have a law in California, AB 665. It passed last session and it went into effect in July, that allows children as young as 12 years old to consent not only to their mental health treatment without their parents, but to consent to residential care, residing in a facility outside their home without the consent of their parents. It's supposed to be on a temporary basis and for emergency reasons. It doesn't tell you what temporary means. I've been in a case right now with temporary custody in the state that's gone on for 6 months.
Wow.
It does not require notification of the parents, and it doesn't require that the child is given back to the parents if the parents don't consent. So,
and are the parents fighting this?
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Getting ahead of you.
Under whose authority are these minor kids when they're in these residential facilities? It's not even clear. So de facto has got to be the state. This is a de facto interference or even termination of parental rights without any due process, because normally when you have a child that is being neglected or being abused or lacks parental care, Child Protective Services is called, and that's appropriate, right?
Yeah, right.
But when CPS comes in, there are many, many due process protections for parents. You have to be in court, go to court within, I think it's 3 days, and then there are all kinds of protections for parental rights. No, that entire system is sidelined.
Wow.
And you're allowing 12, 13, 14 to consent to be doing this. This is telling me, Washington's even worse. It's now in Washington state, as early as I think as 13, children can run away in order to receive gender affirming care without parental consent. So all of this is helping us to see what's really at work here.
Wow.
What really is at work is an agenda to access our children as if they belong to proponents of LGBTQ ideology.
Wow.
Because that's the ideology that's motivating this.
What should parents do?
Okay. What should parents do? Several things. With their own children, with school officials, with CPS. Let's take these three, because it has to start at home.
Yeah.
Number one, parents must begin to inoculate their children from this mind virus, from this contagion, by fortifying their children with the truth and with courage. The truth, I mean, if there is ever a time, parents need to stop taking the position of, I need to be kind of neutral and let my child just kind of figure out their faith and kind of figure out what life is. And I just need to just sort of support no, the proponents of this ideology, they are evangelists. And they're passionate about their religion and about the belief system. And they are targeting your children in order to evangelize them and to proselytize them into their beliefs, LGBTQ beliefs. We must be as adamant, as dogged in our time with our children, filling them with the truth.
Yep.
And then secondly, with courage. This ideology tends to prey on the more vulnerable. But if we teach our children, no, you are resilient, you are strong. No, you're not going to collapse at every little thing. You're capable, and you're capable to speak for yourself, and you're capable of speaking up for others. And and if an adult says to you, or ever asks you, maybe you might be born in the wrong body, hold up your little hand and say, stop right there. I don't want to have this discussion. I want to talk to my mom. Respectfully, I'm not having this discussion. We need to fortify them because we can't be there all day.
Exactly.
All right. The second thing, Kris, is then with schools, because this is really the big interface. Parents need to understand their rights. I understand, California has got these crazy laws, but quite frankly, there are 3 lawsuits challenging them in federal court. And I really do. I feel pretty strongly that ultimately that law is going to get struck down. But there's a higher law, and that's the United States Constitution. We have 6 lawsuits right now where we have asserted that the United States, the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause, provides parents a fundamental right to direct the upbringing, education, care, medical, mental health care of their children. That's Supreme Court case law. We've got 6 cases right now that are going through the federal court system. And so I say to parents, the Supreme Court has made it clear for almost 100 years that parents have ultimate authority over their children. So let's start acting like it.
That's good.
I say to parents, there's something about when you yourself are confident about something and that you began with confidence to express that to others, something about your body language, your tone. Yeah. And so that you begin to proactively make it clear to your school officials, these are my expectations. And I say, do this in writing.
Yeah. This
is our family's belief system. By the way, we're Christians, or maybe Jews, or whatever you are, but we're Christians. This is what we believe. We believe that the Bible says that God made man, male and female. God doesn't make mistakes, and this is what we're teaching to our children. If our child ever identifies as something other than her biological sex, we are to be notified within 24 hours. We do not consent to our child ever being treated as anything other than her biological sex, and we would consider it harming our child and harming our family, and a violation of our parental and religious exercise rights if you are to do that. And put all this in writing. We have a letter along those lines to do one of 2 things. Schools tend to be risk averse and conflict averse, so they'll move on to some other victim. They'll leave you alone. Because they realize we got problem for a parent if we go down this track. Yeah. Or if they do, then you're potentially setting the predicate for a potential lawsuit. The last is Child Protective Services, but maybe I should stop there because I went on for a while.
No, that's great. I do want to make sure that we talk about you have some material that it is really helpful. And I'd love for you to get an opportunity. You have it there?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Tell us about that. You wrote this. This is amazing. This is really great stuff. We're talking about how do we help parents? How do we help kids? And you put together a really good, should we call it a manual?
You can. It's
curriculum.
Called yes, all of those things. It's called a Church Transgender Response Guide. So let me set it up in this way. Kris, our law firm, we don't lead with the fact that we're Christians. That's not how we don't walk into the courtroom saying, the Christian has arrived. We're professionals that do, excellent legal work. However, we, each of us are very strong Christians.
Yeah.
So, for 4.5 years, we just went ahead and did our legal work. But I began to recognize every other institution in our nation has become captured by this ideology.
Yeah.
And so the one remaining institution that's not completely captured, is partially, but not, is the church.
Yeah.
And the church has such a powerful voice. The church is what got the Civil Rights Act passed.
Totally.
In the 1960s, right? So we have such a powerful voice. And frankly, where else are parents to go when this thing happens to their family?
Yeah.
And it's devastating. It's devastating. Or when the schools are making life impossible, or CPS has picked up a child, where else are they to go? To the church. So we created, hope you can see it.
There it is.
The Church Transgender Response Guide. It is a 99-page.
Beautiful. I've seen it in person. It's amazing.
Manual.
Yep.
That basically does 4 things, and then we have some curriculum. But first of all, it teaches church leaders what exactly is this agenda. And there's so much. You and I could talk for 2 hours to really truly understand all the aspect that's on the internet, in schools, social emotional learning, how it's seeped into even just regular like math problems.
Yeah.
If you have a transgender, kid get in a car and go 3 miles at 40 miles an hour, and then you have literally worked into everyday, and then you have a gay, guy that gets into a train and he goes, and when do they meet? I mean, it's that. All right. Understanding this ideology, number 1. Then, number 2, how to speak truth on this from a biblical perspective. We had a minister that was part of our team. We had actually an entire team of experts that we brought together from around the country to write this, one of which was a leader that does this kind of ministry. A minister that does this kind of ministry. And then the third part of it is for parents. How do you support parents? How do you minister to parents whose child has gotten sucked into the ideology? How do you minister to children, to young people who've gotten brought into this ideology? What do? You have a gender dysphoric young person walk into your midst. And, how do you love on them? How do you even reach them? And then finally, how do you protect your own church? Oh, that's not finally, there's one more. But how do you protect your own church? How do you set up policies that are based on reality? Your bathrooms, these are public spaces. You have people from the public come in. Okay. Yeah. How do you set up your church governing documents that legally protect you?
Yep.
That was, the lawyers wrote that. And then finally was a section for youth ministers. How do we minister to kids and fortify them to be truth tellers, to be courageous, and how to protect themselves? Because we're in a day, Kris, and I'll stop with this. We're in a day and age that I think Rick Joyner foresaw prophetically, where we're going to have to train our kids to be warriors at a young age. At a young age.
Yep. Well, Psalms 127 says that children are arrows in the hands of warriors. And I think it's beautiful. What you're sharing is so profound. I mean, it's so important. And I do think, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie The Patriot. It's an old movie.
I did.
With Mel Gibson in it. And, this reminds me, every time we have this conversation with you or with anyone else, it reminds me of this movie because, Mel Gibson it's depicting the Revolutionary War. And Mel Gibson is, he's the patriot who's been a warrior, and he's been in the American Indian War, and he didn't want any more of war. And he's got like 3 boys and 3 girls. And he's like, and so they're voting, and there's this scene where the community's together, and they're all kind of, arguing about whether they should, fight the British or not fight the British. And Mel Gibson, the patriot, stands up and he's like, I'm done with war. I don't want any war. And the order is saying, well, it's going to happen on your watch. And so like 15 minutes later in the movie, they have this beautiful farm, and they have this all this land, and all of a sudden they hear noise out in front, and right out in front of right in their farm is these the British and the Americans lined up, and they're shooting one another. And their son who's rebelliously joined the resistance, comes in wounded, and he looks out at his farm property, and the war has come to him. He didn't go to the war, but the war came to him.
The war has come to us.
And I watched that movie. I own that movie, so I happened to watch it like 2 months ago, and I said to myself, this is a prophetic declaration. Like, if you don't get involved, this war is going to be on your front property. It's going to be your children. It's going to be your grandchildren. And so, I just want to say to everybody who's watching this and who will watch this later, even in record it, is that you may not want to be involved. You may be like, you know what? I don't want to be involved. My kids are good. And like, I'd propose that at this point, the enemy doesn't want anyone to be safe from this. And so we all need to understand, like, before we have a problem, we actually need to be informed. Because if it isn't your children or your grandchildren, it will be your neighbors, it will be your parishioners.
That's right.
And we have an incident 2 years ago. I don't know if you got involved in this, Vernadette, but where one of our pastors, not in our church, one of our pastors in our network came to us and said, I have a family that's been in my church forever, and now their daughter wants to identify as a boy, and they want me as a pastor to call her this name, and they want when she comes into youth group. And, he's like, I don't know what to do. I've sat down with the parents and tried to reason with them. And so this is in our front yard. Like, we can't run from it anymore. It's not, the person you heard about. I knew one of those people 5 years ago. This is in our front yard. And so I really want to encourage people to actually get informed, get involved, make sure that you have a preemptive education so that you know how to guide your children, as you just said. You can't speak with confidence if you don't know what you're talking about. And part of the challenge is the other side does tend to know what they're talking about, at least from their perspective. And often we get a few social media quotes or just watch something like this, and we think we're fully informed, and we're not. So I want to encourage people to get this curriculum, get involved, make sure that you're proactive with your children, have an open door with your children, make sure you have a relationship with your children, make sure you're talking about these issues, because first mention matters before your kids ever get, polluted with this false religion. Make sure you prepare them. And I so appreciate you so much. You just spoke in our school ministry this last week and just blew the place up. The place was, all of my team was like, we have to have her back. That was amazing. Our students were so impacted, and what you're doing is so important. You are a reformer. You are John the Baptist. You're making the crooked places straight, rough places smooth, and you are bringing courage to something that actually needs it. We actually need to courageously take a stand.
Thank you, Kris. If I can say just one last thing, if I may.
Please do.
This is how at our door this matter is. I can't give any identifying information, but there is a family right in your community in Reading that has lost their child to Child Protective Services.
Yep.
Even if you don't have your child in public school, you're in private school, you homeschool, Child Protective Services can go anywhere.
Yeah.
They can follow a family anywhere. And once that sort of thing happens, once that knock on the door comes, I won't say it's too late, but it is a world of hurt.
Yeah.
What you and I are talking about today, it is a nightmare. It is like surgery without anesthesia.
Yeah.
What you and I are talking about is you want to get way ahead of this so that you're not facing that kind of situation, or with the school, you're not facing that. And as you said, with this guide, we also have training that we offer, that we'll come out to your church, or we have recorded training that we can provide. So we want to equip you. You as faith leaders, churches are not helpless. And, we're here to equip you. So thank you, Kris,
Thank you so much for being on. And, I appreciate you so much. God bless you. Well, hey, I just want to say to all parents and all people out here, let's step into the fray. Let's be revivalists and reformers. Let's not lay down and get run over. Let's be people who actually disciple our cities and our nation. God bless you, Vernadette. Love you tons.
God bless you, Kris. Thank you.